Good afternoon. I'm Marick Masters. Today is September 3rd, 2024, the day after Labor Day. I hope you had a nice Labor Day. I'm Professor of Business Emeritus, commentator and podcaster. You can find me at my email address, mastersmarick@gmail.com, on YouTube at Marick Masters, and I hope you'll subscribe to my video recordings. The topics we're going to cover today are major strikes in the U.S. of 1,000 or more in bargaining unit size, recent strike activity, ongoing negotiations, organizing based on data from the National Labor Relations Board on elections they've conducted thus far in 2024 that have been reported and uploaded to their data site, and real wages year to date. As you can see, based on this table, which is prepared by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there have been just a handful of strikes that have occurred this year so far. And at the end of July, there were only 3 strikes in effect involving 4,200 employees at the beginning of the month and 7,200 employees at the end of the month. Recent strikes, you have seen reports of a strike among communication workers at AT&T involving 17,000 technician and customer service agents in various states in the South. You've seen a series of strikes at various localities of Amazon workers involving workers who are conducting unfair labor practice strikes against Amazon, sponsored by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and 10,000 workers, hotel workers, went on strike at various companies across the United States just recently. Ongoing negotiations in which the possibility of a strike looms in some cases involve 10,000 workers, aircraft technicians represented by the Teamsters at United Airlines, 150 fleet drivers represented by the Teamsters at Costco, 28,000 flight attendants represented by the Association of Professional Flight Attendants at American Airlines. They've reached a tentative agreement and are voting on it now. 45,000 workers represented on the East and Gulf Coast by the International Longshoremen Association are engaged in negotiations with the U.S. Marine Alliance involving numerous associations and port authorities in the United States. There are 30 ports affected by this negotiation. A strike involving it would have a very crippling effect on the U.S. economy. There are negotiations taking place now between 33,000 machinists and Boeing at their site in Seattle. The UAW is in various stages of discussions with Stellantis over compliance with a 2023 agreement in which they promised to make investments in an Illinois plant. The UAW is claiming that the company has not lived up to those promises and is threatening to strike. The company holds that they have the authority to make changes in their commitments to investment based on evolving market conditions, and that the UAW does not have a right to strike over these changes. And you also have negotiations between 28,000 flight attendants and the Union of Flight Attendants associated with Communication Workers of America that have recently voted to authorize a strike. The flight attendants are covered by, at American and United, are covered by the Railway Labor Act. You also have an update here on organizing activity based on elections held by the National Labor Relations Board to determine whether or not workers want a union to represent them. There have been 880 total elections and cases closed between January and July of this year under the authority of the National Labor Relations Board. The union has won an overwhelming majority of those elections, as you can see in the number of percentage victory that the union has attained, 79% plus in January, 83.5% in June, 74% in July. But the bad news from the labor's perspective is that only 69,000 workers are involved in this. This is in a workforce of about 150 million people. That's a handful of people who potentially could join the union in represented units, and that is just a sliver of the workforce, not nearly enough to change the overall situation in which union representation, which is now at about 10% of the overall workforce and just at 6% of the private sector workforce, continues to decline, and it has for several decades. You have wages reported here, real wages on an hourly basis, and you can see between July of last year and July of this year, they've remained relatively flat, just a minuscule increase, and the actual number of average weekly hours worked has shrunk very slightly, and that means workers are not getting ahead in the battle against inflation, and this obviously has implications for their propensity to strike, if you will, if they reach an impasse with their employers in negotiations, in those cases in which obviously they are represented by a union, which is, as I indicated, a small share of the overall workforce. A little bit about myself, and you can find out more about me by going to my YouTube site or checking me out on the internet. And I look forward to talking with you in the next update, which I'll provide early next week. Thank you and have a good day.